The USC Trojans, in my opinion, is one of the most fascinating teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the whole country. I think that they are a wild card type of team. In my opinion, they have the ceiling of possibly winning a playoff game, not just making one, but winning one and going for double digit wins and going for it all. In my opinion, they have that uh, chance to do that. But their floor, in my opinion, is a repeat of last year, where they go 6-6 and barely make a bowl game and continue the close losses. In this video, we will break down everything there is to know about this USC Trojans team, from the roster to the schedule to everything else in between. We give it to you right now after this. Okay, so as we get into this video here, I want to lay out a little map for you guys. I will have timestamps down below if you want to skip around, that's all right. So really, I'm going to be talking about the roster grades for the USC Trojans. We're going to start off with the offense here, as you see on your screen, then move our way to the defense, and then talk about the key players for USC. And then lastly, we will finish up by talking about my prediction for USC this upcoming season. So without further ado, let's just dive right in here to my offensive positional grades here. At quarterback, I have an A minus. Whoever starts, be that Mayava or the newcomer Husan Longstreet, whoever starts is going to be great, in part to the coaching and the scheme, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I do think that Mayava will start for a couple reasons. Number one, because he does have experience with USC, as he started the last 4 games of the season as they benched Miller Moss really 2/3 of the way through the year, and Mayava came in a bit of an unknown into that Nebraska game, ended up winning that Nebraska game, winning at USC, a rivalry game there, lost to Notre Dame, very close game, much closer than the score indicated, then beat Texas A&M, came back from behind in that game to help lead them to that bowl win. So he was 3-1 as a starter last year, and they were in a rough spot last year going into that Nebraska game, and he really gave them some juices. He threw for 3 touchdowns and ran for another in that game. He accounted for every single point that was scored that game. So he really came in and made an instant impact. In my opinion, my comp for him is really, he's a younger and really a jitty, or if that makes any sense, a version of Caleb Williams. He needs to have more pocket presence. That's something that Caleb Williams definitely had, but his style of play, Mayava's style of play, definitely reminds me of Caleb Williams, like a younger, more raw Caleb Williams, if that makes any sense to you guys. And if you're Trojan fans, I think you'll agree with me, the way he played last season was a bit like Caleb Williams. And then you have the newcomer, Husan Longstreet, who was a consensus 5-star, All-American type of guy. And if he started, or if Mayava went down with an injury at any point during the season, I would definitely trust Husan Longstreet to really help out. So that's why I have the quarterback grade as an A minus. Mayava still has a lot of questions, and Longstreet is still a true freshman. So that's why it is not an A or an A plus. At running back, I have a C plus here. I'm very hesitant on this rushing attack. It's not great on paper. They do bring in running back Waymond Jordan from junior college JUCO, if I have that correct, and he ran for a boatload of yards at his JUCO college. As I read, he ran for 1,600 yards at his junior college, so he brings plenty of mileage and experience, but experience at the JUCO level, so who knows if he really will pan out at USC. Plus, they brought in some other guys like Eli Sanders, who I think could possibly contend for that. Again, a low 3-star in the portal from a lower tier school. So again, don't feel great about this running back room. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Let me hear down in the comments, but I just don't feel great about the running back room. I could really, it's the opposite for the receivers. I have them as A minus, could very well be A, but they lost a ton in the portal. So they did lose in the portal very heavily. I mean, they lost Zachariah Branch. Yes, he didn't score that many touchdowns last season, but he had a great impact on that team, in my opinion. They lost Deuce Robinson as well, Kyron Hudson. So they lost a really a decent amount of guys, and that does concern me a little bit. If they had even one or two of those guys that I just named back, I would feel great about this room. But as it stands right now, they don't. So they but they do have a lot of holdovers who are really, really good, like Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon. Both those guys, I think that could be one of the best duos in college football by the end of the season. I'm not ready to say that now, but I'm just saying be prepared because they are about to go off, in my opinion. They do bring in a guy named Prince Strachan, wide receiver from Boise State, so you bring in some experience from there as well. And I think that this is just a very well-rounded room, in my opinion, and it's plenty deep as well. Now, the offensive line is a bit of a question mark to me as they weren't great last season. Granted, they weren't terrible, but they weren't great last season. Plus, they lose two of their best starters from last season in Emmanuel Pregnon and Mason Murphy to Oregon and Auburn, respectively. But going into this year, they do retain some of the starters from last season. Plus, they bring in two guys who I think will start right away in DJ Wingfield, who transferred in from Purdue, who will replace Pregnon in the interior of that offensive line, and Ja'Andra Reed, who will also be playing in the interior offensive line as well, transferring in from Syracuse. Both guys, big guys, 6'4", 6'3", 316, guys who can really play the position well, in my opinion, and should be pretty good substitutes. And they bring back a couple guys as well, like Alana Noah, Elijah Page as well. So I think that they'll be fine on the offensive line, but I don't think it's going to be anything earth shattering. Now, before we move on to the defense, I want to talk about the coaching and why I have it as an A plus. Lincoln Riley has really transformed the game with his offense, and he has continued to put together great offenses at USC, even though he hasn't had the best teams at USC. He's continued to put together some elite offenses, in my opinion. I mean, you look at all the games that they lost last season. They lost to Notre Dame, but they put up 35 points against Notre Dame's defense. Now think about what Notre Dame did in the playoffs, and think about what I just said. USC scored 35 on Notre Dame's defense. Same thing with Penn State's defense. USC put up 30 points on Penn State's defense, a defense that Ohio State could barely score on. Defenses, that's a defense that was feared. That's a defense that rolled through the playoffs and lost in the semifinals. So they really put up high numbers versus very good defenses. I mean, Wisconsin didn't have a bad defense at all, and they hung 38 on them. Rutgers, they hung 42 on them. Nebraska, decent defense, 28 points. So the offense has never really been what has really plagued this team. It has been the close losses and the defense, which we'll get to in a minute. But I say all that to say that the scheme has never really changed. The players have always been able to produce on the offensive side of the ball, at least at quarterback and receivers, and by extension, the running backs and the offensive line. So I really just think that this coaching is an A+. If Lincoln Riley were to go on the market right now as an offensive coordinator, every single school in the country, plus every single NFL team, would want him and offer a job to him instantly because of how he has revolutionized the passing attack and the offense in general. So that's all I wanted to say on the offense. Let's move to the defense. Now we move on to the defense, and in 23, they were one of the worst defenses graded, in the country. Last year, they took some steps forward, but they were still pretty bad last year. They had some terrible grades in two places where I think that they need to improve on. That would be generating pressure, as they only accumulated 21 total sacks, which is abysmal, in my opinion, and in a lot of others. And by proxy of not getting enough pressure on the quarterback, they let by a lot of passing yards. 235 per game, and that ranked 98th in the country. Not very good. So they need better play in the trenches at defensive line. And they need better play with specifically the corners, because I think the safeties are very good. So let's go over it now. The defensive line's a B+. It was very turbulent last season, and they weren't great last season at all. And I think a lot of Trojan fans would tell you that. The defensive line was not very good last season, really, at all. and they lost Bear Alexander, but Bear Alexander was really more the problem than anything. He was supposed to be this guy that was really going to help them out, and he really never did. He didn't have that great of stats or anything like that. Now they bring in two guys who I think could really help on the interior of that defensive line. Jamal Jarrett, who transferred in from Georgia. He looks like a Georgia player. I'm going to tell you right now, he's 6'5", 350 pounds. And this is a guy who I think could make a great impact on this team. They also bring in Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky. He's a four-star out of the portal as well, higher graded than Jamal Jarrett, as he brings size to the table as well. He is 6'4", 336. So you bring in two guys who really have a lot of size to them and can help clog the middle of that defensive line. Then you have a guy like Anthony Lucas on the edge, who I think can really help out as well. Now, the linebackers, a bit of an up and down take for them, but I have them at a C+. I like their top end talent. I really do. As Eric Gentry was a guy who has, 19 TFLs in his career at USC, as he's been there for multiple years. He's been a multiple year starter for them. And he's a guy who can really anchor that linebacker core and help teach the young guys as well. But beside him, I just don't really see guys who can really step up and play, like they want them to play, like all Americans or anything like that, or even all Big Ten caliber of players. Guys like Desmond Stevens the second, Jaden Walker, Anthony Beavers will play a lot. But I just don't see those guys as quite the impact player that Eric Gentry is. Eric Gentry is an all Big Ten caliber of player, and I just don't see that out of the rest of them. So I can't, Eric Gentry brings up this room. Without Eric Gentry, this room's probably like a C minus. That's how highly I tout Gentry and how much of an impact I think he will have on the team. And as we move on here, now the corners I have as a B minus. I went back and forth here. I really did. I think that they did some great stuff bringing in DJ Harvey. I think that he's one of their top impact transfers. Prophet Brown playing that slot, I think will pan out pretty well. But other than those guys, really not a whole lot of depth. Alex Graham, the freshman, may take some snaps, which would be, something to look out for. But, guys like Marcellus Williams, maybe a transfer in Chasen Johnson, DeCarlos Nicholson. Those guys will be playing for the USC Trojans in that corner room, but I just don't see those guys as guys who can really help solve the problem. Again, I really do like DJ Harvey and Prophet Brown, but beside them, I think the room isn't as deep as some think. But those two transfers may save this room. You never know. Now, safeties, I absolutely love their safeties. Their safeties being Bishop Fitzgerald coming in from NC State. Now, he was only a 3-star, but he was one of the highest rated strong safeties in the portal. And, he's been receiving some very high praise from a lot of different coaching staffs and, media personnel. So I really do like him. And the guy who stays, one of the best players on this team overall, I think, in my opinion, Kamari Ramsey. He transferred in from UCLA at the beginning of last season, so he played all last season and balled out for him, and I think that he's great as well. And he also brought in Kennedy Urlacher, I can only imagine related to the late, great Brian Urlacher, from from Notre Dame to USC, so a bit of a rivalry there, getting Kennedy Urlacher in, and I think that he is a pretty good safety as well. So I really like this room. And briefly, I do want to talk about the coaching. I know A+ for the defensive side of the coaching, but I really like their assistants, and I really do like Danton Lynn. They say when you are a coordinator that you make your biggest impact in year 2. Year 1 is kind of settling in and getting your defensive scheme and players that you want in the building. And then year 2 is really when you break out as a coordinator. And that's typically what has been the case in the past as well. And Danton Lynn, he was really good last year. He took a defense that was in the 130s down to, double digits, which is a plus 40, plus 50 range, which is great. He does that again. They're a top 50 defense nationally, which is exactly what you want out of USC if they're going to continue to put up great amounts of points all season. So I do think that may end up happening. That's certainly a possibility. And I think that that's more of a likelihood than not because of the coaching that they have. in D'Anton Lynn and all of his assistants, because I regard D'Anton Lynn that highly. And now I think we have had enough of the roster grades and my rambling about the roster. Let's talk about some key players here. I have three categories here: key returning players, top impact transfers, and immediate impact freshmen. Let's go one at a time. Obviously, you got Jaden Mayava as the number one key returning player for them. He makes or breaks this offense, in my opinion. And I think it's a safe bet to bet on him to do that. But still kind of cause for concern, as he did have 6 interceptions in that 4-game span last season. He did have a ton of yards. He threw for 1,201 yards, 11 touchdowns. So, I mean, very exciting player. Very exciting to watch him going forward. And my other guy who I have here on this offense would be Mekhi Lemon. Mekhi Lemon led the team in receiving last year. He had 52 receptions for 764 yards and 3 touchdowns. Could also very much have put Jacoby Lane here. Jacoby Lane was second on the team in receiving with 525 yards, and he had 12 touchdowns as well. He was a red zone specialist for sure, and I think he'll continue to do that at USC. Now, the last guy I have on here is Kamari Ramsey. Kamari Ramsey, like I was singing his praises just a minute or two ago, and he was third on the team in tackles with 60. He had 2 sacks, 5 passes defended, an interception, and forced 2 fumbles as well. He's all over the field making all sorts of plays, and I love the way he played the game as well, and I think he'll continue to just rise in the rankings, and I see him as a round 2 type of player right now, creeping into round 1 depending on how NFL teams look at him, but he's that type of player, and he's going to make that type of impact at USC for sure. Now, my top impact transfers, I have DJ Wingfield, I keep butchering his name, who will play interior offensive line, very critical position, as they did lose Emmanuel Pregnon, like I did say, and we touched on all these players, but Jamil Jarrett on the defensive line, he's really going to be needed there to step up in a big way, and I think he will. DJ Harvey as well, coming in from UCF, and I think that he is a critical position. Like I said, the secondary was not very good last season. It was ranked 98th nationally. Again, they have some really good players in there last year, but they just didn't get the job done. DJ Harvey comes in. He's expected to be cornerback 1, and he's going to be guarding some of the best receivers in the country. So how does he adapt to that? How does he adapt to play in the Big Ten, where he's going to be playing a much more physical type of corner than in the Big 12 and at UCF? So how is he going to really step into that role and play? We'll have to see, as it is a very critical position for him. Now, with the immediate impact freshman, you got to go to Alex Graham, the safety, 4-star out of Detroit, Michigan. And like we said about the secondary, I feel good about the secondary now. But 1 or 2 injuries, and a guy like Alex Graham is going to be playing in a lot of significant games. Then you got to go to Jakeem Stewart. He's a 5-star on pretty much every single platform out of New Orleans, and he's coming in as a guy who looks ready. He's 6'6", 270, and a guy who can come off the edge really well. So I think that he could make a pretty decent impact in the rotation. I don't think he'll quite start yet, but I think he's a guy who could rotate in. Then you have Corey Sims, very interesting receiver out of St. Louis, Missouri. He's a very high 3-star according to 24/7 Sports, but other platforms have him as a 4-star. Be that as it may, I think that he could make an impact here because, like we said, very well-rounded receiver room, but again, an injury or two, and I think he's in, and I think he's kind of in there regardless, as it's not a deep room outside of the top 3 guys. So that's who I have as my immediate impact freshman. So now we've really come to the end of the video here within the last minute or two. Keep this quick. I've been trying to keep this video quick, but you get so excited talking about the USC Trojans and their potential. But this is where the potential meets the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So I have it really in 2 parts here, the schedule prediction. So the wins that you see right now are the wins that I think that they will readily have. They'll have Missouri State, Georgia Southern at Purdue, Michigan State at Illinois. You may be surprised by that prediction, but I don't think Illinois is going to be that great this season. Then Northwestern. I think that those teams that they will beat pretty readily. And now you can see the full prediction here. I have them going 9-3, 6-3 in the Big Ten, placing 3rd in the Big 10. Now, I have them beating Michigan because they're coming off of a bye, and Michigan, I think, will struggle with the early part of their schedule. I do think that coming off of that win, they will lose at Notre Dame. It's going to be a very tough game. Notre Dame is going to be extremely good this season. Don't get it twisted. Notre Dame's going to be back in that playoff conversation. They're going to be back in the playoff period. I'm just going to tell you right now. And I don't think USC is the caliber of team to beat Notre Dame. I think I see it a lot like it played out last year, where it's a very high scoring game, but USC is just not able to keep up because their defense. So I think Notre Dame will take that one, especially that game being in South Bend. I do think they lose on the road at Nebraska, and I'm very high on this Nebraska team. I think Nebraska will also finish 9-3. By the way, just a sneak peek there as well. And then they go and beat Northwestern. They reset a bit by beating Northwestern. They beat Iowa. I think they lose at Oregon. I think Oregon's going to be too good again. And then I think they finish up the year by beating UCLA by proxy. They'll be 9-3. So there you go. That's my prediction for them. Let me know down in the comments below. And, just let me know anything down in the comments below, whether you want to talk about the video, good or bad, the schedule, my roster grades, impact players. Just let me hear it all. I respond to every comment down below. I also would really appreciate it if you subscribed to the channel. I know I had that thing earlier that said subscribe, but I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. I'm just reminding you now. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.